For years, fans have wondered how Celine Dion's children have been coping with the spotlight, especially her eldest son, René Charles. Now, at just 24 years old, he's finally breaking his silence, and what he revealed confirms everything we suspected all along. From carrying the weight of his father's legacy to protecting his mother during her heartbreaking health battle, René Charles has stepped into a role no one could have imagined. But what exactly did he say? Let's find out. Celine Dion is celebrated around the world as one of the greatest vocalists of all time. Her career spans decades, filled with unforgettable hits like My Heart Will Go On, and she has left a permanent mark on the music industry. But behind the stage lights, awards, and sold-out shows, there is another side of Celine that has always been more important to her: the role of being a mother. For Celine, motherhood wasn't just another responsibility, it was a lifelong dream. Her journey toward becoming a parent was not easy. She and her husband, René Angelil, faced several struggles with fertility. After multiple challenges and treatments, Celine finally welcomed her first child, René Charles Angelil, into the world in 2001. It was a moment that changed her forever. Despite being at the peak of her career, Celine made it clear that her child would come before everything else. From the very beginning, Celine embraced motherhood with all her heart. She often described her son as her greatest blessing and openly shared how his arrival gave her life a deeper purpose. Fans admired her dedication, not only as an artist, but also as a woman who managed to balance fame with family. Even as she continued to perform on the world's biggest stages, her thoughts and energy were constantly tied to her son's well-being. Her legacy as a mother extends beyond personal devotion. She has served as an example of how unconditional love, patience, and sacrifice can define true success. For many of her fans, Celine's relationship with René Charles symbolizes the pure bond between a mother and child, one that fame and fortune could never overshadow. In the end, her most meaningful achievement may not be her Grammy Awards or record-breaking albums, but the way she nurtured her son into adulthood. The birth of René Charles Angelil was more than just the arrival of a child. It was a miracle that Celine Dion and her husband, René Angelil, had been waiting for with deep hope and prayer. For years, the couple faced heartbreaking struggles with fertility, a challenge that tested their patience and faith. After undergoing multiple rounds of in vitro fertilization, Celine finally received the news she had been longing for. She was pregnant. On January 25, 2001, René Charles entered the world, and with him, a new chapter began for the Dion Angelil family. His birth was celebrated not only by his parents, but also by millions of Celine's fans around the globe. To many, it felt like a fairy tale coming true, a beloved superstar blessed with the gift of motherhood after enduring so many obstacles. From the very start, Celine embraced motherhood wholeheartedly. She described the moment she first held René Charles as life-changing, one that made every struggle worth it. For her, nothing compared to the joy of hearing her baby's first cry or holding his tiny hands. This was not just about becoming a mother. It was about fulfilling her lifelong dream of having a family with the man she loved. The birth of René Charles also carried symbolic meaning. It gave Celine a renewed sense of purpose. While she had already achieved legendary status in music, her son became the center of her universe. She often shared in interviews that everything else, awards, fame, even music, would always come, second to being a mother. That sentiment resonated deeply with her fans, who admired the way she valued family above all else. In many ways, René Charles's arrival was the beginning of a new legacy. He was not just the child of two devoted parents. He was a symbol of perseverance, faith, and unconditional love. For Celine, his birth was the greatest gift life could offer, and it became the foundation of everything she worked for in the years that followed. Being the child of a global superstar is never an ordinary experience, And for René Charles Angelil, growing up as the son of Celine Dion came with both privilege and pressure. From the moment he was born, the world already knew his name, and the media closely followed every detail of his life. While other children his age could play in parks without notice, René Charles's every move was often documented and discussed in headlines. Celine, however, made it her mission to protect her son's childhood as much as possible. Despite her demanding career, she prioritized spending time with him, making sure he experienced the joys of a normal upbringing. She once shared that even though she was performing for thousands on stage, the most important audience was always her son waiting at home. Her desire was to give René Charles the love and stability that fame sometimes threatens to take away. But being Celine Dion's son also came with expectations. Many wondered if he would follow in her footsteps, whether he had inherited her musical talent, or if he would be pressured to live up to the extraordinary legacy of his mother. For a young boy, that level of attention could feel overwhelming. René Charles, however, chose to navigate life at his own pace. He was often seen enjoying sports like hockey and golf, activities that allowed him to step outside of the spotlight and just be himself. Still, no matter how much privacy Celine tried to provide, the fascination never completely faded. Every public appearance brought comparisons, speculation, and sometimes unfair judgments. Yet, through it all, René Charles developed a quiet resilience. Growing up in the shadow of fame shaped him into someone who valued authenticity and independence. His childhood was not just about being Celine Dion's son. It was about finding his own identity in a world that constantly reminded him of who his mother was. That balance between the normal and the extraordinary became the foundation for the man he would later become. For René Charles Angelil, life has always been centered around one person, his mother, Celine Dion. Their relationship has often been described as unshakable, and for good reason. After losing his father, René Angelil, in 2016, the bond between mother and son grew even stronger. René Charles stepped into a role that went beyond being just a son. He became Celine's pillar of emotional support during one of the most difficult times of her life. Unlike many celebrity families where fame can create distance, René Charles and Celine built their connection on trust and honesty. Celine has often spoken about how she encourages open conversations with her children, never treating them as just kids but as individuals with voices worth listening to. For René Charles, that approach created a deep sense of respect and admiration for his mother. Their closeness is also reflected in how protective René Charles is of Celine. Even though he largely avoids the public spotlight, whenever he does speak, it's usually to defend his mother or to express his love and gratitude for her sacrifices. He understands the weight she carries, both as a global icon and as a single parent, and has often expressed how much he values the balance she maintained between her career and motherhood. Celine, on her part, has always been vocal about the pride she feels for her eldest son. She frequently describes him as her miracle, reminding the world how precious his birth was to her after years of longing to become a mother. Their relationship goes beyond the typical parent-child dynamic. It's one built on shared struggles, unconditional love, and mutual respect. Even as René Charles pursues his own path in life, away from the constant flash of cameras, he remains closely tied to his mother's heart. In many ways, their bond serves as a reminder that behind the glitz and glamour of stardom, what truly matters is family. For René Charles Angelil, the presence of his late father, René Angelil, is something that continues to shape his identity and life choices. His father wasn't just a parent, he was also one of the most influential figures in the music industry. The man who discovered Celine Dion and helped guide her career to unimaginable heights. Growing up, René Charles witnessed firsthand how deeply respected his father was, not only as a manager but as a visionary who believed in dreams and had the discipline to make them reality. Losing him in 2016 was a devastating moment for the family, but it also created a sense of responsibility for René Charles. Though still young at the time, he understood that he was now the eldest man of the family, and that meant protecting and guiding his younger siblings while also being there for his mother. Celine herself has mentioned that René Charles carries so many qualities of his father: calmness, quiet strength, and an ability to observe before acting. While he has not directly entered the same career path as his father, René Charles honors his legacy in more subtle ways. His foray into music, particularly his rap and hip-hop tracks released under the name Big Tip, shows his willingness to explore his own artistic side, something his father always encouraged. Though his sound is different from Celine's, classical ballads, the desire to create and perform is undoubtedly inherited from his parents. Family friends and insiders often remark on how René Charles has a maturity beyond his years, something they credit to his father's influence. René Angélil instilled values of hard work, humility, and perseverance in his children, and those lessons remain with René Charles today. Even if he never takes on a managerial role in the music industry, the principles his father lived by are deeply ingrained in him. Ultimately, carrying the legacy does not mean copying his father's life. It means honoring his memory by living with integrity, courage, and a sense of purpose. And for René Charles, that is perhaps the most meaningful tribute he could ever give to the man who built the foundation of their family's story. While being the son of a global superstar like Celine Dion naturally brings attention, René Charles Angélil has been determined to step away from simply being known as Celine's son. From an early age, he showed interest in charting his own journey, even if it meant facing public scrutiny. Rather than following the exact blueprint of his mother's legendary career, René Charles explored new directions that would allow him to express his individuality. In 2018, he surprised fans when he released his own music under the stage name Big Tip. His debut songs, most notably Catwalks and Never Stop, highlighted his passion for rap and hip-hop, genres very different from his mother's ballads. For him, this wasn't just about experimenting with sound. It was about proving that he could create something on his own terms. While critics were quick to compare him to his mother, René Charles embraced the challenge, showing resilience and a willingness to take risks. Outside of music, he has also been drawn to sports, particularly hockey and golf. For a time, he was actively pursuing hockey, a sport he deeply loved, before shifting more of his focus toward academics and music. Friends describe him as someone who doesn't shy away from trying different things until he discovers what truly fulfills him. This reflects his belief that finding your path doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, exploration, and the courage to fail before succeeding. What stands out most is René Charles's refusal to rely solely on the Dion name. Instead of basking in inherited fame, he has shown a desire to prove himself on his own merits. Whether through his music, sports, or his presence as the quiet anchor of his family, he continues to grow into a man defined by his choices rather than his legacy. René Charles may not yet know exactly where his path will lead, but his journey shows that carving out one's identity, especially under the shadow of fame, requires determination, resilience, and authenticity. And in this way, he is gradually stepping out of the spotlight of his parents and into a future uniquely his own. For René Charles Angélil, being Celine Dion's son is not only a blessing but also a deep responsibility. Beyond the glitz and glamour of worldwide fame, their relationship has always been rooted in love, respect, and unbreakable family bonds. Celine has often spoken about how becoming a mother transformed her life, and René Charles, being her first child, holds a special place in her heart. Since childhood, René Charles has been his mother's source of strength. When Celine faced her most difficult battles, her husband René Angélil's long struggle with cancer, and later his passing in 2016, René Charles became the quiet protector of the family. At only 15, he stepped into a role no teenager should have to face, providing comfort and stability for his grieving mother and younger brothers. That moment revealed not only the depth of their relationship, but also the maturity he developed at such a young age. Celine, known for her powerful stage presence, has often admitted that her greatest role is being a mother. She has described Renee Charles as her pride and joy, openly expressing how much she relies on him emotionally. Despite her superstar status, Celine ensured her children grew up grounded, teaching them the values of kindness, humility, and hard work. Renee Charles has carried those lessons forward, embodying the compassion his mother instilled in him. Their bond also shows through small but meaningful gestures. At his 18th birthday, Celine wrote an emotional message expressing how proud she was of the man he was becoming. During her health struggles in recent years, Renee Charles has stood quietly but firmly by her side, showing the world that their relationship extends far beyond fame. It is built on unconditional love and loyalty. For Renee Charles, Celine is not just a global icon. She is his mother, mentor, and guiding light. And for Celine, her eldest son remains her anchor, her reminder that family is the most powerful force of all. For much of his early life, Renee Charles Angelil lived outside the glare of cameras, shielded by his parents' decision to give him a normal childhood. But as he grew older, he began showing signs that the stage, just like for his mother, was where he truly belonged. His quiet step into the spotlight was not about chasing fame, but about finding his own identity and voice. In 2018, the world caught its first glimpse of Renee Charles as an artist when he unexpectedly released 2 rap songs on SoundCloud under the name Big Tip. The tracks, inspired by his own life experiences, quickly gained attention, not only because he was Celine Dion's son, but because they showcased raw talent and confidence. For a young man who had lived his entire life under the shadow of one of the greatest voices in music, it was a bold and surprising move. The music world reacted with curiosity, while fans of Celine were both shocked and intrigued. Many wondered whether he would continue pursuing music or carve his path in another direction. But for Renee Charles, this was less about public approval and more about expression. He was stepping out of his mother's enormous shadow and daring to create something uniquely his own. Later appearances further cemented his growing presence. At award shows and tribute concerts honoring his late father, Renee Charles displayed grace and maturity, speaking publicly with poise beyond his years. He wasn't just Celine Dion's son anymore. He was beginning to emerge as a young man with his own story, his own ambitions, and his own dreams. This step into the spotlight was not just about music, it was about courage. Renee Charles proved that while he deeply respects his mother's legendary career, he isn't afraid to explore his own voice, even if it leads him down a completely different artistic path. His journey into public life marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where the world could finally see him not only as Celine's son, but as Renee Charles Angelil, an artist in his own right. The death of Renee Angelil in January 2016 was not just the loss of a father, it was the loss of a guiding force, a mentor, and the anchor of the family. For Renee Charles, who was only 15 at the time, the grief was overwhelming. He had grown up watching his father battle illness with incredible strength, but nothing could have prepared him for the day he had to say goodbye. At such a tender age, Renee Charles was suddenly thrust into a position of emotional responsibility. While still a teenager, he became a source of strength for his mother and younger twin brothers, Nelson and Eddie. The weight of that responsibility could have easily broken him, but instead, he carried it with quiet resilience. Publicly, Renee Charles kept a dignified silence, avoiding the spotlight while his mother shouldered the immense pressure of continuing her Las Vegas residency only days after her husband's passing. Behind closed doors, however, he was learning to navigate grief in his own way. Hockey, close friendships, and music became outlets for him, a way to channel emotions he often didn't express publicly. In 2019, during Celine Dion's concert in Las Vegas, René Charles moved the audience to tears when he delivered a heartfelt tribute to his late father. Speaking with remarkable maturity, he honored René Angelil not just as a public figure, but as the loving father who had always believed in him. It was one of the few moments the world truly saw the depth of his pain and his determination to honor his father's legacy. Coping with such a devastating loss shaped René Charles into the man he is becoming. While grief never truly fades, it gave him perspective and a stronger sense of identity. He grew up faster than most teenagers, carrying both sorrow and pride in equal measure. Today, he continues to keep his father's memory alive, not by living in the past, but by pushing forward with courage. For René Charles, coping with loss has never been about forgetting, but about becoming the kind of man his father would have been proud of. René Charles has always shared a bond with Celine Dion that goes far beyond the usual mother-son relationship. From the moment he was born, Celine often described him as her miracle, the child she and René Angelil had long prayed for. That sense of gratitude and deep love laid the foundation for a connection that would remain unshakable even in the face of tragedy. As a single mother after René Angelil's passing, Celine leaned heavily on her eldest son for support. While still navigating his own teenage years, René Charles provided her with strength, comfort, and companionship. Their relationship became more of a partnership. He was not only her son, but also someone she could confide in when the weight of grief and responsibility became overwhelming. Fans often noticed how protective René Charles was of his mother. Whether standing quietly beside her at public events or supporting her behind the scenes, he carried himself with a maturity that surprised many. His presence became a steady reminder to Celine that she was not alone in raising their family. Despite Celine's global fame, she always tried to give her son a normal upbringing. She respected his privacy, allowed him space to explore his passions in sports and music, and encouraged him to discover his own path rather than simply follow hers. That balance between being the world's biggest superstar and a devoted mother helped René Charles grow into a confident young man who understood the importance of both independence and family loyalty.